On the day before Jesus died, Satan must have thought, I've got him. Not just his son, but the whole plan. His last chance, the great Messiah, just hours from his death. And then what will he do? What, another Messiah? Wave his hand, let everyone off the hook? I don't think so. See, he has to follow different rules. He can only do what his justice and integrity allows, and he and I both know it. Pity. Such a noble plan wiped out by cosmic rules of order that he wrote. Oh my, this is good. See, how does he answer this one? Millions of failed, unrighteous people he wants to love and spend eternity with. How nice. There's just this little issue of, sin. You can't just sweep this one under the carpet. You can't just make them righteous because you want to, and if they are not righteous, well, then they can't go to heaven. Well-meaning sentiment doesn't override justice no matter who you are. Or else his own heaven will be polluted with corruption forever. Oh, and by the way, how's he going to answer this one? The rabble he says he loves, they happen to be slaves, every one of them, to the sin they chose as a race. It's choked their very pores, their fate sealed with indelible ink. So even if he could clear them, they still have no nature but to sin. They were forever ruined in the garden, and they lost the key. Oh yes, and this whole wrath against sinners deal, that's a thorny one, eh? They've done irreparable harm to his justice. See, there's an actual substance to sin. It goes endlessly past forgiveness. They've broken irreparable stuff, and somebody's got to pay. Nobody's paid for a long time, and the kid with the money has just been waylaid before he got to the auction block. So these detestable worms will now suffer eternity. If I lose, everyone loses. Oh yes, and there's this little issue of his integrity. How's he going to explain all these hundreds, thousands of years passing over sin without any penalty at all? Doesn't look on one's record unless one simply doesn't care about his own righteousness. My. my. If one's going to put himself in a position of judge, the public's going to want answers for such impropriety. So, the just and loving God experiment isn't working out too well. It's just so sad when someone sets himself up to be so perfect. The fall is so much further. And so the indictments are screamed out throughout the universe, throughout the galaxy. Failed, sinning people cannot be made righteous again. A righteous judge must condemn sin, not justify it. You can't free sinners by a wave of the hand. They will always be trapped in their nature to sin. And God lacks integrity if he just ignores the damage and injury caused by sin. Trouble is the indictments, for the most part, they look true. Satan studied the book since the day he fell, and he's been looking for a slip, and appears that he found more than one. And here's the kicker. Satan knows that God will not and cannot behave unrighteously, so God looks trapped. He can attempt to set free anyone he wants, but he must do so at the cost of his character, the core of what makes him God. See, a sacrificial death by one who is himself compromised is no payment at all. And so the race is doomed. The evil one wins, there is no hope, and the universe waits for the axe to fall. It is described in Romans by Paul as he talks about the consequences of what we have done. He starts in 1:18 and he says, For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So all humans, of every race and rank, every creed and culture, Jews, Gentiles, the immoral, the moralizing, the religious, the irreligious, are without exception sinful, guilty, inexcusable before God. There's no ray of hope, no light, no prospect of rescue. Except this. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been manifest, being witnessed by the law and the prophets. If you have your Bibles, join me in chapter 3 of Romans, verses 21 through 26. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all those who believe. There's no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, being justified as a gift by His grace through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus, whom God displayed publicly as a propitiation in His blood through faith. Now this was to demonstrate His righteousness, because in the forbearance of God He passed over sins previously committed, for the demonstration, I say, of His righteousness at the present time, so that He would be the just and justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. My brothers and sisters and friends who I've never seen before, and some who I'm looking at again who I haven't seen for a long time, welcome to Grace, the series. Oh my gosh, you guys. The work that has been done for this is so beautiful. Do you see the posters? There's posters on both sides. And look at this. They get to go the first week on the marquee slot, on the little mantles. Isn't that beautiful? Both sides. Next week, there's nobody on the marquee. This week, we got 6. But it's beautiful. Then, after they're done, they'll go off of here, and they'll go on this side and on this side. So you'll have the same ones on both sides. So cool. And did you see the little bookmarks in your... Huh? All right, you can sell those. And Sam told you about the app, and we've got the website, odfchurch.org, for any of those long lists that I'm going to be given, and Bill will be given, and Bruce will be given. You'll be able to go on that website, odfchurch.org, and find those, and you'll probably be able to find them on the site too. I'm sorry, I've just got some friends I want to keep in touch with. I just read this last night. It's just too cool. So I have this thing about the Grace series up on my Facebook page, and as mayor of Facebook, people are checking in. But this person says, I'm out to dinner with Stacy, and I read this. I'm in SoCal, she says, but I want to be there. It was more than 20 years ago, so back in the 1995 version of this. She says, somebody sent me a bunch of cassette tapes from your series on grace. Cassette tapes, how do I explain that? They wrote, there was a magnetic, never mind. But she says, you see, I lived in Kenya, East Africa, and I was longing for some good teaching from home. It rocked my boat to hear this, and it made a lasting impression on my life and ministry. I am forever grateful to you and for your community and for the love for this grace-filled life. I'll be praying for the same impact on your people this time, and that God will be glorified, because I know how much you love to teach on this subject and how important it is that we wrap our hearts and minds around such things from the Bible. Bless you. Too cool. Too cool. Just to remind you, guys, this is also online streaming, and unless I'm right here, It's just a blank wall that they're seeing. Anyways, this stuff's going outside of this little community. So today, we get to unpack six simple and yet immensely complex theological terms God has handpicked. Before the world began, He handpicked these very words because they were so full and lush with meaning to explain and describe the most wonderful works of God that took place at the cross and resurrection. I'm going to ask you, will you strap on your theology helmets today? No, I mean it. They're by your side. Each of us have them. No, seriously, I want you to grab down, pick it up, and put it on your head. Your theology. I see about 7 of you doing it. This is not a game. Okay, be careful. You strap it on here. If you have this saggy turkey chin, you can get it caught in there. So be so careful when you. Okay, because I'll sometimes do that and pinch myself. But okay. Everybody got them on? Say yes, we do, John.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, friends. Thank you. Then here we go. We're going to look at this passage in 3 ways. Verses 21 through 23, God's imputed righteousness in us. In verse 24, God's justifying grace to us. And then finally, God's propitiating death for us in verses 25 and 26. So let's start first with God's imputed righteousness in us. So we start to look at the slides and work our way through them because he says even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ. The righteousness of God, God's righteousness, that takes us to the very first definition. To be fully upright, just, and perfectly fair in judgment. It is the combined perfections of God's character that vindicate His judgments and display Him to be trustworthy and true. That is God's righteousness. And then He makes this stunning statement that you and I would be given that righteousness. Us. So imputed righteousness is a legal term that carries the theological weight of being counted, ascribed, reckoned, and conferred as righteous. The declaration of all the benefits of God's perfect character, credited and deposited, all of them to my account. So when that accusation and indictment is yelled through the universe, I got a document. That's what this is. That's what imputed righteousness is. That's what he's talking about in 3:21, and we'll see in a moment in Philippians 3:9. Whatever I have is his, hers, and nothing that can happen can change it. Nothing. That's imputed. It is imputed to my account perfectly. Now there's another word that doesn't come into play so much here, but it is a righteousness which we need to talk about because Romans will work its way through only imputed righteousness and eventually hit imparted righteousness. Imparted righteousness, crazy! The merging of God's righteousness into our very being, into my fiber, into my cells. I am now not only declared righteous, I actually am righteous. Our entire DNA has been reconstituted. It is from this holy, transformed person that we mature into the expression of righteousness. We get to grow into who we already are. My cheap way of doing and explaining this would be impart, to become part of, to have impartation. So this is imputation. It is credited to my account, but this is like me taking a pill. It goes into me and becomes part of me. So not only am I Christ in me, apparently I am tramadol in John Lynch. Imputed righteousness, imparted righteousness. And you'll see imparted righteousness in 2 Corinthians 5:21, Ephesians 4:24, where it says, put on that which is already yours, created in the righteousness and the holiness of the truth. Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified. It's no longer the old me who lives, but Christ in me. So we'll speak a lot more about imparted righteousness as we watch that progression from only imputed to imparted. But right now, in this passage, imputed is in the spotlight. For if you're going to answer the accusation, failed and wicked people cannot be righteous no matter how much someone loves them, there's got to be an imputation into my account of righteousness that doesn't have to mature into actual perfect expression. An already completed documentation. Only that will answer the accusation into the universe. See, John Lynch, by imparted righteousness, I'm fully righteous. I'm just not fully mature. So here's John Lynch, and if you put me out into the universe as Exhibit A, it doesn't look good. They go, see, my point's made. Look at that slouch. And so that's why he says, we'll talk about this later, but right now I need this. This is true about John Lynch all the time. All the time. It's apart from the law. I love that he puts that in there. He says it's apart from the law and witnessed by the law and prophets. The law being that interlude of history for the Jew, for Israel, called the Mosaic Law. The law that spanned from the Ten Commandments all the way until Jesus. And it was given to prove to mankind that we couldn't be righteous on our own, but mankind, we tried to excel in it to justify ourselves before God. And so he says here, whatever this righteousness is that you have, you couldn't earn it. You couldn't impress God to get it. That's why I love what Paul yells out in Philippians when he says, I want to be found in him, not having some righteousness of my own that I derive from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness which comes from God on the basis of faith. That's what's being talked about in 3:21. And it was witnessed by the law and the prophets. It's the fulfillment of the Old Testament. It's not a divine afterthought. This is way back in Leviticus 17. It was so fascinating. It says, these blood sacrifices. There's something in the life of the blood that it has to be a blood sacrifice. So Israel, I want you to build bulls, goats, lambs, sheep. I want you to give every year, if you remember Caleb teaching, every year you will get an atonement, a covering for your sin by sprinkling the blood of these lambs and goats and bulls. It will atone. It will cover for a period of time. And so all of this was a picture. In Leviticus it says, Leviticus 17:11, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it's the blood by reason of the life that is in it that makes atonement. Caleb was saying a couple weeks ago that when Jesus came, something happened different than atonement. Atonement covered, but now my sin would be taken away when Jesus came. When the spotless lamb came, my sin would be taken away. So John the Baptist standing there in John 1:29, and he sees Jesus and he says, oh, behold the spotless Lamb of God, who now will not just atone or cover up for another year, but He will take away the sins of the world. And this righteousness, in verse 22, it says it comes through faith in Jesus to all who believe. It's offered to everyone because everybody needs it. There is nobody since Adam and Eve who has not needed this righteousness of God. There's never been anyone where God goes, oh, no, you are special. You're very good. You don't need my anything. No, God, well done. Bravo. There's never been one. All have sinned. I love how he says, have sinned. It's the aorist tense. It's this cumulative picture of everybody having sinned. It's a done deal. In your past, you've all sinned, and you continue to, present tense, fall short. You keep falling short. You have sinned, and you continue to fall short. And so imputation becomes the full measure of my worth. This documentation that says this can never be taken away from you, John Lynch. It is who you are. Nobody can take it away. Your behavior can't take it away. Your failure can't take it away. Anything that you say from your childhood or anything that you thought would identify you, nobody can take it away. And the trouble is, we don't want our worth coming from imputation. We don't want it coming from impartation. We want our worth to come from our independent talents and piety apart from anybody's declaration. As though we've created these talents or any desire in us to excel or abstain. Well, here's the problem. If you don't find your worth in imputation, you'll always doubt your worth. Because it'll always take more and more to make you feel worthy. And there's somebody out there always in competition with you who will make you feel like you are less than. And you'll feel like you're in some twisted contest that really nobody else cares about. And we'll compare for the rest of our lives to find our worth. I know. I can get so tired on that treadmill. Because there's always that person out there and that new revelation of someone who does what I thought I did so well. Oh, you guys, it's a glorious moment. Maybe the second most important moment in your entire life when you place your full weight on a declaration that you are enough by the only one who matters. To place your full weight on a new life coded into you that gradually and steadily reveals you as the person you've been declared. So the first indictment has been answered. Failed, sinning people cannot be made righteous again, unless a sinless one is willing to become their sin and allow his righteousness to become theirs. God, God, made him, Jesus, who knew no sin, to actually become my sin, that I would become the righteousness of Christ in him. Go figure. Isn't it crazy? Satan knew that Jesus was heading to death. He just couldn't understand it was this very death that would solve every indictment that he was presenting against God and mankind. So we have looked at God's imputed righteousness in us, and now we get to look at God's justifying grace to us. Justification. Beautiful word. It is the opposite of condemnation. It's more than forgiveness and relationally so much more than pardon. It's a legal term that bestows a righteous status, a just freedom from punishment and full benefits of favor and access and intimate fellowship with God. Whenever someone talks about you being made right with God, that initial step, that initial picture before sanctification is justification. Forgiveness says, you may go, you've been released. Justification says, get in here. Come on! You are welcome to everything I have. How do How do you make sense of that? Well, how in the world can someone be fully just and fully loving at the same time? It seems like they would always be in disagreement with each other. And this is what God did. It's like, what do you do with a judge, a really integrous judge, who walks in, is at his court, at his bench, and in walks his son, who has done a heinous crime that he now has to pay for, but part of it is a financial payment that is unbelievable in its amount, and the son would never be able to do it, and then would be ruined. What do? You're a righteous judge. You're a good man. You can't just wave it off. And so what the judge decides to do is take off his robe, lay it down, step down from the bench, call the bailiff over, take out his checkbook, and write the check for the payment. Here. And now he goes back up on the bench, puts on his robe, and proceedings continue. That's what Jesus did. Jesus, who placed the planets into order, who set the boundaries for the rivers and the seas, takes off his robe, takes off his right to be seen as God, and comes as a servant in the appearance and the form, the true form of man. Takes off that, comes down to earth. And this is where the analogy falls short. He writes the check in his blood. And then is able to sit at the right hand of God and come back with his robe back on and his authority fully back on. His authority, his glory never left, but boy, his ability and prerogative to show his glory, he left off. Whew. So the second indictment's been answered. A righteous judge has to condemn sin and not justify it, unless justification could be a gift through a loving and righteous judge paying the fine himself. And then he talks about redemption. Redemption. Purchasing, I love this word, for the purpose of setting free. It's a commercial term that denoted our slavery and our bondage to sin, recognizing our guilt and total inability to liberate ourselves. Jesus bought us out of the captivity of sin, shedding his blood as the ransom price. I was owned in sin. Sin owned me. Not owned me like, oh, he's a rough taskmaster. Sin is personified as being able to own me. And it did. And so we now belong to him for the purpose of experiencing our freedom. This redemption is once and for all, but presently applied to experience freedom from guilt in our daily lives. It was pictured in the Old Testament, of course. You could pay for me to get out of my slavery if you were another Israelite. You could actually do that. Leviticus 25 talks about it. It talks about Israel being redeemed from captivity in Egypt, Exodus 15, and then Babylon, Isaiah 43:1. And in the same way that they were slaves, we were slaves in bondage to our sin and guilt, utterly unable to liberate ourselves. And so Jesus redeemed us by shedding his blood as the ransom price. That's why Mark 10:45 says, he came to give his life as a ransom, as a redemption for many. Think of that, the picture of this, that this word denotes, that redemption denotes. It pictures this, that John Lynch, having failed again and again and again, and selling myself down the river again, and hurting others. I know who I am, and I am in this slave auction block. And I know my degradation. My head's down. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed, but I know I'm going to do it again. And one day, someone comes and says, him. I will pay for him. And someone next to me says, he's talking about you. It's Jesus saying, I know what he's done. I know what he does. I know what he's going to do. I love him so much. John Lynch. I will pay for him. That was the craziest picture for me. That was the most unbelievable picture that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, that drew me to him. Why would you do that? How could you love me that much? I wanted nothing to do with him. And see, it's more than just a theological statement of what he does. It's a real thing that frees me. Redemption is an actual thing that's going on. It is life. See, all my life I've said, see, this is who I am, this is what I do, I've always done it, I'm always going to do it, it's who I am. That's who John Lynch is. He does that. It's just a matter of time. Maybe I cleaned it up a little bit by becoming a Christian, but I know sooner or later I'm going to do this because I always do that. That's what I do. And so I say to you, it is another glorious moment, maybe the third most glorious moment in your life when you believe, when you dare to believe, I'm not who I was. There is another power operating in me that is stronger than my sin. We're going to get there in Romans 8. I've been purchased from slavery. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I'm no longer a slave to the power of sin like I used to be. And so the third indictment's answered. You can't free sinners by a wave of the hand. They'll always be trapped in their nature of sin. Unless there was a way his death could become mine and give me a new nature, a new creature. Imparted. A brand new creature who has a new nature that would release me from the bondage of sin's dominion and power. Whew. Well, there's one last technical word that he uses that has so much meaning. It's in verse 26. Or verse 25, whom God publicly displayed as propitiation in his blood through faith. Propitiation. What a cool word. It's the act of satisfying the one who has been wronged and repairing what has been broken. See, sin carries injury and a need for reimbursement that forgiveness can't restore. Our sin has injured God, and true justice demands that sin must be punished, or else heaven is just a cheap trailer park. In an act of breathtaking love and wisdom and integrity, God placates his own objective wrath against sin by choosing to take our place and suffer the full cost of justice. In Christ's death, God's justice was satisfied. The payment God demanded has been made. God paid himself off. So he doesn't any longer have to hold us to blame. He has appeased his own wrath by letting that wrath fall onto his own Son. I always have this picture when I look at propitiation. It's like you guys, some of you young people with your children, come to my house and you just let them run wild. I don't know why is it so hard to say, stop that, don't break the lamp. But they do. They eventually break a lamp. An expensive lamp, like a lamp from Europe. Maybe a vase more than anything else. It's broken, and you say you're sorry, and I say, I forgive you. Now go home. But who's going to pay for that lamp? Somebody's got to pay for that lamp. And you come back again, your kids think it's funny the first time, so they break a lamp again. And that cheap picture is the exact thing that he did. It's not enough to say, I forgive you, but something really precious in the sacredness of what makes God God and what makes heaven heaven and what makes righteousness righteousness got broken. And it has to be repaired, and that's what propitiation is, through his blood. My little children, 1 John 1 and 2, my little children, I'm writing these things to you that you won't sin, but I know you're going to sin. So if anyone does sin, when you do sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. And he himself, it says, is our propitiation for our sin. And not for ours only, but also for all who believe. So the fourth indictment's answered. God lacks integrity if he just ignores damage and injury caused by sin. Unless God himself would placate his own wrath against sin by venting it upon himself. This is your Jesus. What do I do with that? See, he demonstrated, it says in verse 25, he publicly displayed, there were centuries apparently where it looked like he was doing nothing about man's evil. Where's God's justice? They seem to get away with anything, and the answer is he's been patiently restraining his hand so the human race could continue, but it feels like God's justice seems compromised by his self-restraint. There is no expression in all of Scripture that seems more upside down than this one from chapter 4, verse 5, where he says this, God justifies the ungodly, the wicked. Wait, what? He repeatedly, all through the Old Testament, had told the Israelite judges that they had to justify the righteous and condemn the guilty. Deuteronomy 25, Isaiah 5, don't you dare acquit the guilty. I won't justify the wicked, he says in Exodus 23:7. Then how can Paul affirm that God does what he forbids others to do and what he says that he himself will never do, even designating himself as the God who enjoys justifying the wicked? Only by this. Christ died for the ungodly. The cross says that God remains just. Righteousness and love merged together. All the punishment that we deserve is now poured out without restraint upon Jesus at the cross. In those 3 hours, when darkness fell, compressed time, compressed intensity took place, and my Jesus took my hit. He faced an eternity of the judgment of God. This is what he experienced on the cross. It was all poured out on him, and we go, no. If he's a fully loving God, that's not grace. He can't do that. If there was another way, don't you think they would have tried it? And Jesus says, I want to do this, Father. And the Father says, if you do, then okay. So such is the scandalous nature of the gospel, the wicked, the ungodly, the compromised, the lawbreakers, the looters, the previously uninterested, upon their belief are justified, and the righteous appearing, convinced that their behavior makes them righteous, they are condemned. He did all this to demonstrate his righteousness, so that as the just and yet free to pour love on us who deserve only wrath. You know what this has reminded me of the last few weeks, just going through this, has been The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Thank you. Aslan says this as he's talking to the children. Oh, I love this. Though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still which she did not know. Her knowledge goes back only to the dawn of time, but if she could have looked back a little bit further into the stillness and the darkness before time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. She would have known that when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack and death itself would start working backwards. And so it has happened with us. And who gets this? There's only one condition. It's those who believe. In verse 22, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. This is not religious talk. It is not something that sounds good so that we can say nice things on Sunday morning. This actually happened in real history to us. And all you have to find yourself doing is believing that this Jesus is the Son of God and that He did these things that Scripture says He did. That He bore publicly the propitiation for everything I've ever done wrong. That He called out from the auction block slave line and said, I want to pay for him. I love him so much. I love her so much. And you have to believe that it worked. And you put your hope in Him and Him alone. And you will be free.